All right, thank y'all. Like Dan said, I'm Jordan Lyons. I've been here at Recon for almost 19 years, and just born and raised here in Southwest Louisiana. So, we're going to talk about something that's probably near and dear to most of our hearts. I think so, and that's going to be food, right? Food, meals, get-togethers, and tables like we're sitting at, like you're sitting at right now, right? Obviously, down here in the South, we're very much known for food. You can look at all kind of TV deals, and people are like, "Man, I went down to Texas, Louisiana, wherever, and man, their food is phenomenal." So, but we're known for that. We're known for tailgate parties and large get-togethers, birthday parties, all the food and fellowship. That's a big part of our culture down here in the South. Even I know a lot of people, and I'm one included, that a lot of our travel plans are around where we're going to eat, right? What time we're leaving, where we're going, all those things. It's focused on that. Growing up, for me, dinner time was a big priority, okay, for my family. So my parents, stop what you're doing, come inside, whatever. We're going to have dinner. We're going to sit down at the table. We're going to talk about the day. We're going to go through all of that. So that was a big deal. And through that, and looking back on that now, there was a lot of talking, a lot of laughter, even some singing. Sometimes would take place. My grandparents, when they were alive, every Monday we were at the Piccadilly. If y'all remember that, every Monday night we were at the Piccadilly, and we were eating some dinner. Just lots of sweet memories, right? After school snacks around the table. Get home and mom has something cooked, some cookies, some monkey bread, something to snack on after a tough day. Sit down and visit with my mom, my siblings, about what's going on, what that looks like. A lot of things centered around the table, right? Even homework. A lot of us sit at the table and do homework. Lectures from our parents. Some of them were not fun. Sad stories were told around the table. Exciting news. A lot of those things all were focused around that dinner table. Just a lot of memories, a lot of decisions, family decisions. If your parents ever called a family meeting and there was some serious decision that was going to take place. Friendships, right? School lunch table, friendships were created, strengthened, maybe some relationships mended around the table. Interestingly, I ran across this. I never thought about this. That us as humans, we're the only creature that sits at a table to eat a meal. You ever thought about that? No one else does that. We're it. That's how God designed us, right? For animals, right, and for all the creatures out there that God created, food is just a source of fuel. That's period. We're eating to survive. But for us, a lot of times, it's way more than that, right? There's a whole lot more going on when we're around a table, when we're eating, when we're enjoying. One great expression, I think, of God's love is He gave us over 10,000 taste buds in our mouth, right? Thank you, Lord, for that. So, and it's so powerful that you can smell something or you can taste something, and it can bring you back to as a little kid. Okay, that's how powerful it is. Well, tables, meals, they were all a big part of Jesus' ministry as well, and His life, right? And with Him, it's eternal significance. All right, just for us, it's here on this earth. For Him, it's eternal significance. It's actually mentioned, if you start breaking down dinners and meals and foods and all those things, you're looking at over 1,200 times this is mentioned throughout the Bible. So we're going to systematically go through each one of those. And no, I'm kidding. So no, we're going to look at a few and hone in on one. So John chapter 21, verse 12. So what we have here is so Jesus has already been crucified. Peter has denied Jesus, right? You know, the rooster crows and all that. So Peter and these, I think there were 7 disciples, so they're out fishing, and they're fishing all night, okay? They fishing all night, and they caught nothing. Some of y'all remember this story. They see somebody on shore. He yells, "Hey, y'all caught anything?" "No, sir. Throw your nets on the other side." So they throw their nets on the other side. And we know they can't even get them in. There's just abundance of food. And Peter realizes this is the Lord. So he dives on in, being Peter. We know how he is. And he's trying to get to the shore as fast as he can. He gets there, and what's Jesus doing? He's cooking. He's got some fish, some bread. He's got some charcoals lit up. He's cooking, right? The rest of the guys get there shortly after Peter, and Jesus said, "Bring some more food over here," because there's more of them, right? He needs a little more grub to eat on. So he cooks this food, and then, if y'all remember what takes place next, he's essentially cooking breakfast for them. It's the morning time. So he starts going through this process of talking to Peter. And he's basically given him that opportunity to redeem himself, so to speak, right? He had denied him 3 times. And so he starts asking, "Do you love me?" Right? And he talks about feeding my sheep. So he starts going through that. So he gave this great opportunity to mend that relationship, for that to take place. And it happened around mealtime, cooking. Okay. Next one here, John 2, the wedding feast at Cana. Okay, if y'all remember what happened there. So they run out of wine, right? So they're having the big party. Jesus is there. He has not started his ministry yet. None of that's taken place. But they run out of wine. And so this couple's trying to save face, essentially, because they run out. That's very disgraceful in that time and that culture. So what happens? They gather the servants, and Mary looks at the servants, and she says, "Do whatever he tells you." We could spend all day talking about that piece, but he says, "Do whatever he tells you." And so he turns this water into wine, okay? And all that were present at this wedding, they benefited from it. And it was the best they had ever tasted, right? So do what he tells you. When you're in his presence, you're going to benefit. Mark 6. So we're talking about the fishes and the loaves. So Jesus and the disciples that have been out, they've been doing their thing, sharing the word. They meet back up with Jesus, and there's so many people, there's so much going on. It says in the word, actually, they couldn't even stop and eat. There was that much going on. Okay? So they load up, they head across, they get to where they're going, and there's this huge crowd there. Okay? So of course, they're needy. Jesus knows this. He starts ministering to them, pouring into them, and then here it comes dinner time. And it's kind of a remote place, so they can't just go walk down the store and grab some food. So they start talking about how we're going to feed these people. Okay? They gather up 5 fishes, 2 loaves, because Jesus says we got to give these people something to eat. So they gather all this up, and it says, this is the words from the Bible, it says, all ate and were satisfied. Okay? Not, man, this got my hunger pains away, and I was just kind of okay. It says all ate and were satisfied. And then they collected 12 baskets of leftovers. Okay? So there's abundant provision when Jesus is there. More than we can imagine. So I want us to focus on one particular piece. And there's so much in here, we're just going to pull a little bit out because this could go on for a long time if we really broke it down. But we're talking about Jesus at the table at the Last Supper. Okay? So we're going to touch on a few things here. So if you look back, what was happening here was Jesus had been on the, let's call it the public ministry side. There was a lot going on. He's out there. And so he pulls his core guys. He pulls his disciples in, and they go to this upper room. Okay? And this is his close group of friends that have been with him through a lot of things. So he pulls them into this upper room so he can privately pour into them and minister to these guys. So let's read here. We're in John 13, 1 through 5. It says, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During the supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper, laid aside his outer garments, taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was wrapped around him." So we're stopping right there. So what do we see? The job of cleaning feet. Okay, first of all, this is a transient society. They're wearing sandals. They walk everywhere they go. Their feet are nasty. Plain and simple. It's not like one of us going out and cutting grass for an hour or two, come back in. It's not. This is another level. This job was designed for the lowest of the servants. The bottom of the barrel. That's who it was designed to do this particular job, right? Even the disciples, they wouldn't have cleaned each other's feet. That just wasn't a thing, because if you go back and look, these guys were sitting there bragging before, arguing about who's the greatest. So that wasn't going to happen. They're not going to clean each other's feet. But you look at Jesus, and he has that selfless, servant, humble mentality. Okay, that he's gonna pour this water. He's gonna wash these feet, and it says in there. Let me find it right here. It says, "Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that all had come from God, and was going back to God." So he's here on earth in this human flesh, right? But he has all power. Okay? He can do anything. He could think about those feet being clean, and it would happen. That's the kind of power he has. But what did he choose to do? He chose to humble himself, right? Humble himself, be the lowest servant, and clean these people's feet. Disciples were shocked, right, that this took place. But of course they allowed it, because he talked to them about it, and he allowed it to happen. So what else happened there? Talking about loving your enemies, right? Judas was there. Jesus was fully aware. He had all knowledge. He knew everything. He knew what was about to take place. He washed his feet anyway, right? Washed his feet anyway. Wasn't a big deal to him. He also, if you go on to read, back then, if you have a special and honored guest, you would break bread, you would dip it, and you would give it to them. They'd be the first one to get this. And that was an honoring thing. And it says in there that he dipped it and gave him the bread. So some of us look at that as just kind of blow by that, right? But he was honoring him, even though he knew his heart. He knew where he was, right? He knew what he was going to do. And it also says that he was probably sitting very close to him, probably in a seat of honor. Okay? So here's this guy that we all know as the bad guy, so to speak. And Jesus is loving on him and pouring into him anyway. Third thing, So he did this to prepare his buddies for his departure. Okay, so that was why he got them all together. And if you sit here and you look over the next 4 chapters roughly, he goes through all these things, okay, preparing them because he knows he's been there with them. They get in trouble, he helps them, he guides them, he walks them through, and he's not going to be there anymore, right? He's coming back for them one day, but he's not going to be there. So he has them up there so he can really pour into them, encourage them, and love on them, right? In verse 34 and 35, love one another just as I have loved you. Believe in God, believe also in me, right? I'm the way, the truth, and the light. Whoever has seen the Father has seen me. He talks about the Holy Spirit, the helper, right? That's going to help guide and direct. He talks about, stay attached to the true vine. Okay, so he goes through all these things. No greater love. Then he goes into, you will be persecuted because of me. The world's going to hate you because of me. But don't fear, because I've overcome the world. So he spends these next 4 chapters just pouring into these guys, trying to lift them up, encourage them, and really get them ready for the world and what they're about to go do. All right? Guiding, teaching, encouraging, all those things. So now that we know some of these things, or we've talked about some of these things, what's the point? What are we doing? Right? So my first question to you, and we're going to have a bunch of them. How are you using your time at the table? What does that look like? Is it an opportunity to minister to somebody, to talk to them, to pour in? Are we so glued on our cell phones? What are we doing when we're at the table? Right? We're all called to magnify God, basically, and mature His people. So what are we doing when we're at the table? We have lots of opportunities. At the table with our families, co-workers, bosses, meals, whatever. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Let's not waste them. So let's talk about the things we just talked about with Jesus. How are we showing people to be humble, right? How to serve, how to love. Are we selfless, or are we putting ourselves first with all these things? We live in a very selfish society. Humility does not come easily for a lot of people. Pride is super easy. Anybody can do the pride thing, right? Some of the most prideful times that we live in. How can we set ourselves apart? How can we show that we're different and teach it? Loving our enemies. Man, we write off people pretty fast, right? We get ticked off really easily. Somebody doesn't agree with us. We don't see eye to eye. We can let pride and that arrogance get in the way really, really quick. And of course, social media doesn't help. The news doesn't help. Everybody's bashing each other all the time. Do we love those that don't agree with us? It's going to happen. We're not all going to agree. But we still have to show love. Right? Praying for people that are in authority. Loving those that are above us. Whether it be your boss, just a supervisor, some political official, whoever it is. And I don't mean pray for them that we wish harm on them, right? Pray for them that they would see God's mercy. They'd see His grace. And that they would somehow turn their lives toward Him and honor and magnify Him. So loving our enemies. The last one, like Jesus took his group up to this upper room and poured into them, those closest to us, are we setting aside time and pouring into them? What does that look like? Your families, close loved ones, friends. We all know people that may be near to us. And my preacher says this all the time, near to us but far from God. Right? Also, and this came to my mind the other day, just like Jesus, we have that, he had that public ministry side and we have that private side. Private meaning, again, those under our roof with us, those closest to us, our closest friends, that we can pour into them, that we can minister to them. Are we taking the time to do that? There's a lot of good stuff out there in this world. There's a lot of good things to be a part of, and they're wonderful, right? But we don't want to be so busy on the good, like this public ministry stuff, that we miss out on the great, which is the private stuff. Pouring into your kids, pouring into your grandkids, pouring into your spouse, whatever that looks like. Are we teaching them? Are we talking about the goodness of our God and what he does? We've all experienced it. We got to tell them. We got to share these things with them. How he loves us, right? Are we reading his word with them? Do they understand the power of it? Do they know what that is? Make sure they do. How his word is on our heart, right? When we walk, when we talk, when we get up, when we move around, when we lie down, when we raise up, talking about it. Talking about his Holy Spirit and how he helps us and he guides us, right? How he walks us through. He is the great helper. Talk about how this world's going to hate us because of him. Preparing them for that. Because it's coming. It's here all the time. There's so many opportunities that we have around a table. So again, I'll ask you, what are you going to do with your table? Thank y'all so much.